What if fashion doesn't just repeat because we stumble upon an old magazine and revive a forgotten trend? What if there's actually a ticking clock, one that resets every 40 years and accurately predicts the state of our style? Sounds wild, but history suggests it's true. Hi, my name is Hannah Truly Alicia, and vintage fashion and history has always intrigued me, so much so that I created a TikTok and Instagram about 5 years ago discussing these very topics. But this year I've decided to pursue YouTube and have been putting out videos like The Dirty Secret Behind Vintage Style Soap, the history of 1950s dating, and why the 1950s loved color. If you're into those kinds of topics, subscribe, like, and hit the bell to be notified when I post, as this greatly helps YouTube push out my content to viewers like yourself. Now back to the video. You might be thinking, how? How does one predict our style and what we wear? Let's head back to the glamorous 30s, when the dresses were long, the economy was in shambles, and we had rather large collars. But what if I were to tell you that the pictures you just saw on the screen were not in fact the 1930s, but in reality the 1970s? This phenomenon is called the 40-year fashion cycle. The simple definition for this is the idea that fashion trends repeat every 40 years. So we will be comparing the 1920s to the 1960s, the 1930s to the 1970s, and the 1940s to 1980s. Taking a glimpse at the 1920s, dancing and music took over young adults' lives. Therefore, fashion designers took advantage of this opportunity by creating dance dresses that became wonders to look at while sparkling on the ballroom floor. Some of these dresses could be categorized as flapper dresses. Often you could see boat necklines, no sleeves, fringe, irregular hems, and beading. Most, if not all of these dresses were easy to slip on, making them loose and comfortable. This echoed throughout everyday wear and bled into the 1930s. But how does the 60s tie into this era and time? Well, when we examine past fashion from the 1960s, a lot of it has to do with the cut and style. Both embracing eliminating tight waistline, this has to do with a major cultural shift, as both experienced women's liberation. The 1920s gaining the right for most women to vote, and the 1960s demanding equality in pay, challenging gender roles, and much more. And to embrace these movements, a lot of women wanted to throw out the corsets, the low hemlines, and anything that constricted them, which also included their hairstyles, as hairstyles typically go hand in hand with fashion. Both these decades showcase pixie bob-like hairstyles, a stark difference between the Gibson girl hair of the early 1900s and the victory rolls of the 40s and 50s. Another similarity would be the use of abstract design such as geometric shapes and bold colors. When comparing the fashion of the 1930s and 1970s, we notice not only a number of similarities, but also connections to the economic conditions of those times. The Great Depression began in 1929 and ended in 1939. We experienced widespread unemployment, which caused a great deal of pain to almost every American, and even people outside of the US. Our style became more restrained. Those once short hemlines of the 20s fell, as many young women now needed to find jobs to make up for the lack of money their families required. The 1970s also dealt with a weak economy that not only faced harsh unemployment rates, but as well as a soaring high inflation rate. This too saw the lowering of a once very high hemline. It was now on trend to be demure and modest. Magazines noticed this change and would encourage women to ditch the short mini for the midi skirt. This was a big deal for fashion. A lot of people felt taking away the mini would be taking a chunk of their freedom, putting them back in time when women didn't have much rights.
Well, I was a great advocate of the mini, Michael, when it first came in, but now the mini's definitely out. The midi has every advantage over it. For a start, it's more modest, and if that doesn't appeal to you, it's a lot more warmer, and this is from the girl's point of view, and after all, it's us who has to wear it.
Very good reasons why you should wear the midi and why the mini is definitely out. 1, my mother can no longer look at me and say, "Aren't you rather too old for wearing such a short skirt, dear?" 2, it's very warm, like she says. You can stand at a bus stop without knowing that your thighs are going a very unattractive shade of blue, and who wants congealed thighs? 3, I can fulfill my fantasy of being a lady as I trip around with my very demure skirt on. 4, what was the 4th thing? I can wear laddered tights. Now, how about that for an economy?
This is when I should bring up an idea called the Hemline Index Theory, where the hemline will either rise when the economy is strong or it will fall when the economy is weak. And the 30s and 70s are inherently a blueprint for that. According to a Dutch economist who studied fashion and economy from 1921 all the way to 2009, and what she uncovered was a fascinating find that could very well tell how our economy will be. She said hemlines tended to rise 3 years before an economic upturn and fall 3 years before a downturn. But one thing about this theory is when we put it to test to today, it's much harder as trends and styles fade at an extreme rate when compared to the 20th century. This could be because of fast fashion and social media trends. But if you need some more context of this theory, another great example would be the 1990s. Earlier in the decade, it was plagued with a recession, and during this time, long hemlines were quite popular. But as things started to look better, the mini skirt started making its rounds once again. But why? Why do we as a culture do this? Some suggest it's our way of not showing off in a time of turmoil. Others say it's just a coincidence. What do you think? Okay, let's go back to the main topic, the 40-year fashion cycle. And I saved the best for last, at least in my opinion, when it comes to comparing both decades, the 40s and 80s. At first glance, the 1940s and 1980s seem like two completely different decades. The 40s emphasized uniformity, while the 80s embraced bold originality. But look closer and you'll spot striking similarities, enough to confuse even experienced vintage collectors. Fortunately, tags and materials are usually a dead giveaway. The reason for this overlap lies in their shared structure: strong shoulder pads, sharp lines, and prominent buttons. Both eras favored designs that not only made women look strong, but also helped them feel powerful. So, if you finish the video, let me know what your favorite era in fashion is. I would definitely say for nostalgia, it would have to be the 60s, 50s, and 80s. I would absolutely love to make more content about the 1980s. I'm just not sure if you guys would be interested in that. So let me know in the comments below if you would like any videos about the 1980s. As always, my name is Hannah Truly Alicia. Thanks for learning with me.